This video will be a note-for-note breakdown of the guitar solo. Due to time constraints, the supporting rhythm guitar and bass parts will only be given a quick once-through to demonstrate their count and picking patterns near the end of the video. A tab sheet for each part will briefly be displayed at the end of its respective analysis. A final demo of all parts combined will also close out the video. The tuning used in this video and on the record is drop D and 440 wavelength calibration. The low E string is tuned down a full step in pitch, while the other 5 remain tuned to standard. The entire solo is going to be 16 measures long. We're going to play the first measure using straight 16th notes, counted 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda, 4 eanda. What we're going to do here is pick down on the downbeats, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're going to fill in the other 16th notes using left-handed technique in the form of hammer-ons and pull-offs. We'll start out the first quarter of the measure by placing the first finger on the B string at the 2nd fret. We'll pick this down on 1. On the E beat, we're going to hammer on with the middle finger to that same string at the 3rd fret. On the AND beat, we're going to pull off that middle finger back to the 1st finger on that same string at the 2nd fret. And on the beat, the final 16th note of that first quarter, we're going to pull off back to the open B string. The first 4 16th notes are going to be counted 1 eanda and will sound like this. Okay, on 2, what we're going to do is place the first finger on the G string at the 2nd fret and do something similar. Okay, we'll pick that down, we'll hammer on with the 3rd finger to the same string at the 4th fret, that's the E beat. On AND beat, we're going to go back to the 1st finger on that same string at the 2nd fret, that's the AND beat, and on the beat, we're going to pull off to the open G string. The second quarter will sound like this, counted 2 eanda. Okay. Now we're going to shift our hand position up a step in pitch on the fretboard. We're going to place the first finger on the D string at the 4th fret. We'll pick this down on 3. On the E beat, we're going to hammer on with the middle finger to that same string at the 5th fret. On the AND beat, we're going to pull off back to the 1st finger on that same string at the 4th fret. And on the beat, we're going to pull off to the open D string. The 3rd quarter of the measure will sound like this, counted 3 eanda. Okay, to finish up the first measure, we're going to shift our hand position back down a step in pitch. We'll place the first finger on the A string at the 2nd fret. We'll pick that down. On the E beat, we're going to hammer on to the same string at the 4th fret using that 3rd finger. On the AND beat, we're going to pull off back to the 1st finger on that same string at the 2nd fret. And to finish up the measure, on the final 16th note, we're going to pull off with that 1st finger to the open A string. So the last quarter of the measure is going to be counted 4 eanda and will sound like this. So here's what the entire measure is going to sound like. And keep in mind, I'm playing this a lot slower than you're going to hear it on the album. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 eanda, 2 eanda, 3 eanda, 4 eanda. And now we've reached the second measure. We'll begin by placing the 3rd finger on the D string at the 4th fret. We'll pick this down on 1 and let it ring out as an 8th note. On the AND beat right after 1, we'll lift that finger and pick the open D string upwards. This is an 8th note tied to another 8th note on the 2 beat, which will ring out for a quarter of the measure. On the AND beat after 2, we're going to take that 3rd finger and go to the A string at the 4th fret and pick that up. This is an 8th note, and it'll be tied to a quarter note on the 3 beat and ring out for 3/8 of the measure. We'll close up the second measure with two more eighth notes, counted 4 and, pick down and up. The 4 beat is when we pick the open D string down, and the and beat is when we go back to the A string at the 4th fret with that 3rd finger and pick it up. This is what the second measure is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. Here's what the first two measures combined in sequence are going to sound like. Keep in mind, this is being played at a much slower pace than you're going to hear it on the album. I won't count aloud as I play. I'll just give you a 4-count lead in. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we've reached the third measure. The 3rd finger should still be on the A string at the 4th fret. This note should still be sustaining out from the previous measure. What we're going to do on 1 is we're going to slide up a step and a half in pitch to the 7th fret on that same string. We're not going to pick this note. It's going to be produced by the left hand as we slide on that sustaining out note. Okay, so we're here on 1. On 2, we're going to go with the middle finger to the same string at the 5th fret. We'll pick that down, it rings out as an 8th note. On the and beat after 2, we're going to go with the 1st finger on that same string at the 4th fret. We'll pick that up, it's going to ring out as an 8th note. On the 3 beat, we're going to go with that middle finger back to the same string at the 5th fret and pick this down. This rings out as a 1/4 note. On 4, we're going to go with the 1st finger back to the same string at the 4th fret and pick that down. It rings out as an 8th note. And to close up the 3rd measure, we're going to go with that middle finger back to the 5th fret on that same string and pick it up as an 8th note. What I'm going to do here is I'll give you a 4-count lead in, and I'm going to include the last 2 notes of the previous measure as part of the lead in, so you can hear how the 1 beat of the 3rd measure works. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. And now we've reached the 4th measure. The first 4 notes are going to be 16th notes. And we're going to play this much like we did in the first measure of this solo. On 1, we're going to place that 1st finger on the A string at the 4th fret and pick that down. On the E beat, we're going to hammer on the middle finger to the same string at the 5th fret. On the and beat, we're going to pull off back to the 1st finger on that same string at the 4th fret. And on the beat, the final 16th note of that 1st quarter, we'll pull off to the open A string. This open A string is going to ring out through 2, which is an 8th note. In short, that note's going to ring out for 3/8 of the measure. On the and beat after 2, we're going to pick the open E string upwards. This is an 8th note. It'll be tied to a half note, which rings out for the rest of the measure through 3 and 4. So with the 4-count lead in, this is what the 4th measure is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and a 2 and 3, 4. Let's run through the first 4 measures in sequence just one time. I'm going to try to play this in a more album-like pace. I'll give you the 4-count lead in, but it's too fast to count aloud as I play. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th and 6th measures are going to be exact repeats of the first 2 measures. So we're going to skip ahead to the 7th measure. What we're going to do here is play straight 16th notes using alternate picking. Okay, the first half of the measure the first 8/16 notes that is, we're going to work off of the open D string just like this. 1 E and a 2 E and a. And we're going to finish up the measure by placing the first finger on the D string at the second fret and repeating that process. 3 E and a 4 E and a. So with the 4-count lead in, this is what the 7th measure is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. And now we've reached the 8th measure. We'll begin by placing the 3rd finger on the D string at the 4th fret. We're going to start out with 4/16 notes counted 1 E and a, and alternate picking just like this. 1 E and a. On 2, we'll pick that note again downwards, but this time it rings out as an 8th note. On the and beat after 2, we're going to slide up a half a step in pitch to the 5th fret on that same string. We're not picking this note. It's produced as we slide from the sustaining note. Okay, that's going to ring out through 3. Okay, that's tied to a quarter note on 3, which rings out basically for 3/8 of the measure. On 4, we'll close the measure by picking that same note downwards and letting it ring out as a quarter note. So with the 4-count lead in, this is what the 8th measure is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 E and a 2 and 3, 4. With the 4-count lead in, let's run through the 7th and 8th measures combined in sequence just one time. 1, 2, 3, 4. With a 4-count lead in, let's run through the first 8 measures in sequence just one time. This will be played at a more album-like pace. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we've reached the 9th measure. The 3rd finger should still be on the D string at the 5th fret from ending the last measure. What we're going to do here on 1 is pick this note downwards and quickly slide up a step in pitch to the 7th fret. Okay, this is going to be sounded by a quick slide, okay, just like this. 1. Okay, on 2, we're going to go with the middle finger back to the same string at the 5th fret, pick this note down. That's an 8th note. On the and beat after 2, we'll go with the 1st finger to the 4th fret on that same string and pick this up. That's another 8th note. On the 3 beat, we're going to go with the middle finger back to that same string at the 5th fret and pick this down. This is a quarter note. On 4, we're going to go to the 1st finger on that same string at the 4th fret, pick it down. This is an 8th note. And to finish up the measure, on the last 8th note, the and beat, we're going to go with that middle finger back to the same string at the 5th fret and pick it up. So with the 4-count lead in, this is what the 9th measure is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Okay, now the 10th measure is going to be almost an exact repeat of this. The only thing we're going to do differently is instead of sliding on 1, instead we're going to hammer on from the middle finger to the pinky. It's the same notes, and we're going to end it by picking the open D string upwards on that last and beat. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to give you a 4-count lead in and play the 9th and 10th measures in sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. And now we've reached the 11th measure. We're going to begin by placing the 1st finger on the G string at the 7th fret. We're going to start out the first quarter of this measure with 4/8 notes counted 1 and alternate picking just like this. 1 On 2, we're going to pick the open D string downwards and let that ring out as an 8th note. On the N beat after 2, we're going to go back to the first finger on the G string at the 7th fret and pick this up. It's going to ring out as an 8th note. On the 3 beat, what we're going to do is pick this note again downwards and quickly hammer with the 3rd finger to that same string on the 9th fret. Okay, and to finish up the measure, what we're going to do is pick the open D string down on 4, which is a 8th note, and we're going to shift up a step and pitch and place the 1st finger on the G string at the 9th fret. We're going to pick that up. Okay, this is an 8th note, the N beat after 4. So with the 4 count lead in, this is what the 11th measure is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and. Now we've reached the 12th measure. The 1st finger should still be on the G string at the 9th fret from the end of the previous measure. What we're going to do here on 1 is pick this note again downwards and quickly hammer on with the 3rd finger to that same string at the 11th fret. Just like this. 1. That's going to ring out as a quarter note. On 2, we're going to pick the open D string down, and as that's being done, notice that I'm going to shift the hand position of the left hand up a step and pitch so the 1st finger is on the same string at the 11th fret. On the upbeat after 2, we'll pick that note up and let it ring out as an 8th note. On 3, we'll pick that note down again and quickly hammer on with the middle finger to the 12th fret. This is going to ring out as a quarter note. On 4, we're going to go back to the 1st finger on the 11th fret of that same string, pick it down. This rings out as an 8th note. And to finish up the measure, we'll go back with the middle finger to that same string at the 12th fret and pick it up. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you a 4 count lead in and play the 11th and 12th measures in sequence. And also remember, this is being played at a slower pace than you'll hear it on the album. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. And now we have reached the 13th measure. What we're going to do for the next 2 measures is play straight 16th notes with alternate picking. We're going to start by placing the pinky on the B string at the 15th fret and play the first half of the measure just like this. 1 and 2 and. On 3, we're going to take that 3rd finger and go to the 14th fret on that same string and play 16th notes here for the rest of this measure, just like this. 3 and 4 and. Now we've reached the 14th measure. We're going to take the middle finger and go to the same string to 12th fret and play 8 more 16th notes, just like this. 1 and 2 and. And to finish up the 14th measure, we're going to take the 1st finger and go to that same string at the 10th fret and play 8 more 16th notes, just like this. 3 and 4 and. So with the 4 count lead in, here's what the 13th and 14th measures sound like combined in sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And now we've reached the 15th measure. What we're going to do here is play notes on the B string and let the open high E string ring along with it as we play them. We'll start by placing the middle finger on the B string at the 2nd fret. On 1, what we're going to do is pick these 2 strings down together and we're going to slide up to the 8th fret as we do it. What this is a dotted quarter note which will ring out for 3/8 of the measure. On the and beat after 2, we're going to take that 1st finger and place it on the B string at the 7th fret and pick the 2 strings upwards. Okay, this is going to be an 8th note tied to a quarter note on 3, which is also ringing out for 3/8 of the measure. On 4, what we're going to do is shift down and place our pinky on the B string at the 5th fret and pick these 2 strings downwards. This is going to ring out as a quarter note, and it will be tied to an 8th note to start the next measure. In short, it's also ringing for 3/8 of a measure. We just ran out of time in the 15th measure, so that note is tied to the first note of the next measure. So with a 4-count lead in, this is what the 15th measure is going to sound like. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. And now we've reached the 16th measure. Your pinky should still be on the B string at the 5th fret from the end of the previous measure. Okay, this note is going to ring out for the first 8th of this measure. So on the and beat after 1, we're going to go with that middle finger to the B string at the 3rd fret and pick this note up. Okay, this is an 8th note tied to a quarter note on 2. In short, that's going to ring out for 3/8 of the measure. On the 3 beat, we're going to take the first finger and go to the 2nd fret on that same string and pick these 2 strings downwards. Okay, this is a quarter note. We're going to finish up the solo by playing the open B and high E strings down again on 4, and that's going to be another quarter note. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give you a 4-count lead in and play the 15th and 16th measures in sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3, 4. Let's go through measures 8 through 16 just one time in sequence. I won't count this aloud as I play. I'm just going to give you the 4-count lead in. Also, I'll attempt to do this at a more album-like pace. 1, 2, 3, 4. This appears to only be 6 measures, but it's actually the first 8. We'll play the first 4 measures like we normally would until reaching the yellow highlight at the end of the 4th measure. That's a repeat sign. It's going to send us back to the beginning of measure 1. Also notice above the 3rd measure, there's a number 1 that's highlighted in yellow and a bar that extends all the way to the end of the 4th measure. What that is, the first ending. When we play through the first 2 measures on the 2nd pass, we're going to skip all the way down to the 2nd ending, which appears to be the 5th measure on paper, and play those 2 measures. That's actually the 7th and 8th measures. And here's the last 8 measures. Nothing fancy here, we're just going to play them in sequence as they are shown. One, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 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 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, 4. On paper, this appears to only be 6 measures, but it's actually the first 10 measures. We're going to play through the first 4 measures until we hit the yellow highlight at the end of the 4th measure. That's a repeat sign. That sends us back to the beginning of the first measure. Also notice above the 4th measure, there's a 1 that is highlighted in yellow and a bar above that measure. That's the first ending. On the 2nd pass through the first 3 measures, we're going to skip down to what appears to be the 5th measure on paper. You'll notice a yellow highlighted 2 above that measure. That's the 2nd ending. That's actually the 8th measure. What appears to be the 6th measure is actually the 9th and 10th measures. Notice the highlight at the beginning and ending of that measure. Those are repeat signs. It means we play that measure twice. We're just going to ignore the two empty measures at the end of the page. They don't mean anything. The four measures you see here are actually the last six measures of the rhythm part. Notice on the first measure, there's a repeat sign at the beginning and ending of the measure. It means to play that measure twice. This is actually the 11th and 12th measures. The second measure also has those same repeat signs. This is actually the 13th and 14th measures. If this is confusing, what I'd recommend doing is pausing this video and tabbing this out on a tab sheet without all the repeat signs to make it easier for you to follow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4 1 2 and 3 4 1 and 2 3 and 4. This is the first 9 measures in sequence on the bass. The only noteworthy thing here is the diagonal line with the dot above it and below it on the 2nd, 4th, and 6th measures. That means to repeat the previous measure in place of this measure. And this is the final 7 measures on the bass guitar. We're just going to ignore the two empty measures at the end of the page. They don't mean anything.